Hello and welcome to the Iowa State Game Development Club tile mapping workshop. This video we will be going over how to use the tile mapping system in Unity, kind of just an overview of different things you can do with it. I thought I'd start off with a little example. If you recognize this or not, this is from Super Mario Bros. 3 for the NES. Just some different features you can do with tile mapping. Like you can see the ground, it repeats, so basically it's just a tile, if you don't know what tile mapping is already, that you can just draw on the screen, just a picture that repeats over and over. Same with these backgrounds. Probably you've got the corner piece, there's probably a side piece here, a middle piece with just the color, and then you got more simple things like the blocks themselves. And then you've also got the background. Typically, tile mapping, how it works is there's at least two different maps. There's one that's the hard things that you can actually touch, which would be the ground in this case and the blocks. And then there's like the background, which would be like these bushes, because you don't run into the bushes. So that's basically similar to what we're going to try to make here. So first thing you want to do before we get started is make your way to the website for the club, which you can find on the Iowa State Club website. Make your way to the downloads page, and we're going to download the tile mapping asset pack, which will have a bunch of stuff in it. I just downloaded. Apparently I'm not logged in. Oh, okay, I downloaded it anyways. Cool. So that's good. Just leave that in your downloads folder for now. And then in your Unity hub, once you get that opened up, you want to make a new project. I'm just going to do it 2020.3. It's the most recent version. And we'll want to do the 2D template. And you can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it tile mapping tutorial. And then create. Okay. Okay, so after your Unity project is loaded, the first thing you want to do is just move those assets in here. Keep that folder. So you can just find your downloads folder, and first thing I'm going to do is extract it. And then after that is done, we can just take this assets folder that's inside of it. We're actually going to just take these folders, and we're just going to highlight them all. If you don't know how already, you click the first one, and then you can hold down Shift. It'll select all of them. And then you can just drag that so it all automatically imports to our assets folder. And then we already have all the animations and everything set up, so all we got to do is make the tile map. So first thing we want to do is actually set up the tile map. So if you look in the textures folder, okay, there's nothing in there. In the textures folder, we have a tile map, which has already been set up. That's cool. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, well anyways. Normally, if you would just import this as a normal image, all of these settings would be different. It would default to a single sprite. Just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to set these back. Okay, so normally after you import an image, these would be the default settings. So in order to actually extract all of the different tiles from the tile map, you'd have to, well, first you want to set your sprite mode to multiple. What that'll do is it'll tell Unity that there's multiple sprites, images within that one image, so it'll allow you to basically cut them out into their own images. So the first thing you'll notice if you click the sprite editor is that the textures are a little decolored. It probably won't be that for you just because I saved the assets with all of the things already done for you. But normally, yeah, they'd look a little discolored, so that is why if you look down here in the compression formats, you want to change it from automatic to RGBA 32-bit. That basically is either doesn't compress it or it's a lossless compression, so it'll keep all the colors so they don't get janky like that. Typically with bigger images, like, the compression is fine because you're not really going to notice, but since this is pixel art, you're going to need that. One other thing you want to change is you want to change filter mode to point, not bilinear. And then this will make it so the pixels are more clear as opposed to it trying to blend them together with bilinear interpolation. Okay, and then now sprite editor. So you might already have all the sprites cut out again, but if you want to split them up so they each have their own tile, easiest way to do it is go to the slice tab up here, and if you try automatic, it'll just make a big square around each chunk, which isn't what we want. We want their own individual tiles so we can do tile mapping. So you want to change the type to grid by either size or count. It's up to you. The size is the actual size of each tile in pixels, and then the count is the number of them from up and down, left to right. I'm going to do size just because I know it off the top of my head. So each of these tiles is 8 by 8 pixels. So if you enter that in here and click slice, it will make a bunch of squares. And that's basically what we need. Sometimes if you have extra stuff drawn, it'll draw like a square down here, and you can just click on it and click the delete key. It will delete it, which we don't want to do that right now because there's actually a pixel there that we need. But after you've done all this, you can click the apply button up here, and it will save your changes basically. And then you can close that. So now that we have that done, it will display all of the tiles down here. And then we're pretty much ready to move on and work on the actual tile map. So how you want to do that is you go into your hierarchy with the scene view, and you go to 2D object, tile map, and rectangular because it's a square tile map. So it'll automatically make a grid for you, and then now we can name the tile map. So for this tutorial, we're just going to make 2 tile maps. One is a background, which, as I talked about earlier, it won't hit anything. It's all behind you. And then the other one is a foreground, which would be the actual ground and the walls that you run into. So I'm going to call this one background. And then if we right-click on the grid object again, 2D, tile map, rectangular, it'll make another one. We call this one foreground. So in order to actually draw the tiles on here, we need to open the, I think it's called the tile palette. Yeah, the tile palette window. To find that, since it's not a default page, you go to Window, 2D, and Tile Palette. And now it'll just pop up here. I'm just going to put mine next to the inspector. And so now we got the nice tile palette menu over here. Of course, there's no tiles yet because we have to add them. So you should have this palettes folder in here. We will use that here in a second. But inside of the palettes folder, I'm actually going to make another folder called tiles, because you can make multiple types of palettes. Maybe you have like different levels in your game, so you kind of want to keep things organized. So all the palettes would be in here listed, and then you have the tiles for each one or whatever. Yeah, so then it's pretty easy to make this actually. You just take this image. Oh wait, nope, never mind. Scratch that. You got to make a tile palette first. So yeah, you do that by pressing create new palette, and then create, and then it'll ask you what folder you want to put it in. So we want to put it in the palettes folder that there is. Boom, piece of cake. Next thing, now you want to drag it. So if you take the Tilemap image and you drag it, it'll give you a prompt where you want to store all the tile data. So I'm going to put it in the tiles folder. It'll automatically create all of the tiles. Boom, there you go. They're all right here. Just for now, so this is the water, which is all animated. So I'm actually just going to delete all of them. So you can actually mess around with this. If you click this little edit button here while it's highlighted, you can either move these around. If you use the eraser, you can delete them. Let's say that I wanted to just like move these over. Selecting does that. And then you click yeah, move, and then you can drag them around. So basically what all these are is select lets you select a bunch of them. M lets you move them like I just did. Brush will let you draw. So if I wanted to put them here like that, make a pattern or something. This is like area draw, so you can draw like a rectangle. It'll repeat the pattern over and over that you have. This is like an ink dropper, lets you select one. Eraser erases, and paint bucket fills everything in. And then once you're done editing, you can click the edit button again. It'll save it, and then now it's just normal. Won't let you delete anything. Alright, so now we're pretty much ready to draw a small level, you know, using all of these over here. So it's actually really easy. If you select the brush tool, it'll have the grid over here. All you have to do is click on the tile that you want, and then you can start drawing. However, if you'll notice, this is really tiny, and that is because I didn't set the size. So if you look over, it's probably already set to 8 for you, but if you look over here, pixels per unit, this is basically how many pixels it has in between each grid line. And since our tiles are 8 pixels big, we want to have 8 pixels per unit. And then now, that is why it is fixed. So if you have a higher resolution of tiles or whatever, they're like 16 by 16 or whatever, you'd put that number into here, and then it would automatically size to the amount, the grid tiles. So yeah, now you can take the tiles, draw a little map. If you want to pause it now, go ahead. I'm going to draw a little stage for the tutorial. One thing I wanted to point out, there's a couple tricks to doing this. If you notice over in the drawing or in the tile palette, you can drag and it'll select multiple tiles. This makes it really easy for like platforms and such. You can literally just place like one at a time. Makes it super easy. And say that you wanted to make a pattern over here, like let's say let's just say that I wanted to make like pillars. If you take this and drag it, it'll repeat the pattern over and over, makes a bunch of pillars. Really easy. That's why if you press edit, do the same thing, you can draw it like that. Maybe if you want them more spaced apart, like here, I'll use a real world example. So I have like these here, right? Click save, drag over like that, and then now with the paint filled box tool, it'll space them all out so they're all under the platforms, just like so. And yeah, yeah, it's a bunch of different tools. Actually, you know what? I forgot one thing. Okay, so I did forget one thing. Pay attention when you're making your map to the foreground and the background, because this will come in play in a couple minutes. Again, the background is what you don't want to interact with. The foreground would be the actual what the player runs into. So these walls, I mean, they're fine down here because the player's not going to like fall down here or whatever, or not going to like need to hit them. I'm assuming they'd jump on the platform. But say that you like build one here in the foreground, then they'll just run into it. Whereas if you click on the background, select it, if I put one here, they'll just walk straight through it because it's in the background. I'll explain how to do that in a minute. Alright, after you have drawn a little stage or level, whatever you want to call it, we're going to go ahead and add our player. So in the prefabs folder down here in the project tab, there's a player. You can go ahead and just drag them in. It'll have everything set up for you. Yeah, all you gotta do is press play at this point. But just a little trick for adding in objects and such. You notice when you drag them around, like, you know, it's a tile game, they're all in blocks, they all should be even, but when you drag it around, it's just it's hard to judge. If you turn on the toggle grid snapping up here, it'll automatically connect to wherever this arrow thing is, the transform, to one of the grid points. If you want it to go in between, for example, but still on an even interval, like halfway, if you hold down Control and move it, it'll increment by, I think, a fourth. Yeah, by 1/4 of a grid, so you can move it like halfway in between, so now it's like that. Let's go ahead, press play. You'll notice something right away, is that player just falls through. It's because we have not added a collider to our foreground yet. So this is actually pretty easy. You can just go to the foreground, the foreground object here, and on the inspector tab, add component, and you want to add a Tilemap Collider 2D. And this will automatically make a collider for every object. It runs fine, and it's really easy. It does it all automatically. That's all you got to do. So now if we run it again, our player actually stays on the ground. However, the camera is not following the player. So there's multitude of ways you could go about fixing this. The easiest way would just take your camera, drag it onto the player, and then when you press play, the camera will follow. It's a little janky. But how I did it, because I want more of that that Mario feel. I don't know if you've ever played it before, but how it generally works is the player has some wiggle room in the middle of the screen, and then when they start getting close to the edge of the screen, then the camera will follow them. Just so when they're moving around normally, the camera won't move. So I made a script for that, which you can just apply to the camera. Easy peasy. It is called loose camera follow. So you can either drag it directly or just look it up here. Loose camera follow. And then this will just have a slot for the player, just so the camera knows what to follow. Just drag that in there. And then it'll automatically follow the player when it starts to move far away. If you look at the code, you can of course change what it is, how close or how loosely, but yeah. One thing you'll notice, if I go back here actually, is that the slopes aren't exactly smooth. If you notice, I'm standing on like an invisible and then just like get stuck. I can't go up the slope. And if you look in the editor, click on the foreground, you'll notice that the colliders look weird. Yeah, it might be different for you. I might have fixed that again, like I said, with the assets. But there's a pretty easy way to fix this, and I will show you how. So if you want to go back to the tile map texture on the inspector tab, we want to go to that sprite editor again. And this time, up in the top left, there's different modes. We don't want the sprite editor, we want the custom physics shape. And this will basically let us customize what the collider is for each tile. So we have to do this individually. So we're really only fixing the slopes and then these little guys here. So if you click on it, it'll highlight in blue, click generate, and then it'll automatically make a outline. In case this looks familiar, it's basically what it was already. Just use the default. All you have to do to fix it is you take the square and you drag it. It should snap. If not, you can enable that up here on the top left to the nearest pixel. There we go. Piece of cake. We'll do the same thing for this one. Generate, drag down, drag over. And then same for these little guys, because these guys will go like here. It's like this 1 pixel when it's at the end or the bottom of a slope or whatever. So for these, it's so small that that Unity just ignores them basically because they're so tiny. So the easiest way I had to force it, that I found to force it, is to take one of these, click copy, and then go over here, click paste. It'll just paste it in here. And then we only need 3 points. So we can click on this square and press the delete key. It'll remove the point. And then we can drag it down, drag this one over, and we want it to look like that. So that when it's next to this one, it is a smooth line. We'll do the same thing for this one here. Take this, copy, paste, delete, delete, oops, and then drag down, drag over. And you can do the same thing for any of these. The background tiles, of course, don't really need it because they're the background. If you notice, it's way out here, but it's like your player shouldn't really hit it anyways. Unless you want this in the foreground, then in that case you should edit it. You could drag that over, drag this up, delete one of these, put it on the corner. Pretty self-explanatory. You can go ahead and edit whatever you feel. Once you're done, make sure you click apply before you close. And then you can close the sprite editor. And now if we look back at the scene, oh wait, we gotta refresh. I forgot how to do that. Oh, that's how. Okay, so in order to actually update it, after changing it, you gotta go to the Tilemap collider and just click reset. It'll automatically rebuild all of the things. So if you look, it's smooth. If we play, it's smooth. Player goes up it with ease. You jump from the platforms. Notice we don't hit the clouds, but we do hit the platforms, which is expected. Alright. There is one thing, which I haven't seen it so far. Let me play, see if I... Sometimes this might happen for you. I think it might depend on your computer. When you're walking around, you will see... Oh, I just saw it for a split second there. you like get like a random line that just appears in between. Maybe it's blue, maybe it's black. They'll just appear. Just ignore that. And so the easiest fix to that would, if it happens for you, is you go to Edit, Project Settings, go down to the Quality tab here, and then you want to look for anti-aliasing. I probably said that wrong. And turn it to disabled. What this does is it tells Unity that when the tiles or then the textures are like a certain way, it tells it not to blend them together. It'll just use the ending tile. What it normally does, in 3D this makes sense. If it gets far enough away, it'll just blend the colors together, but when you're in pixelated and it's 2D, it doesn't make sense because then you just get weird lines that aren't the right color, and it's really noticeable. So typically it's just easiest just to disable it, plus you don't really need it in this scenario. So now if you look back in the prefabs, got a couple more items. So I found the easiest way to make items, there's a couple different ways to do it. You could, of course, make them as a tile, put them in the tile palette, draw them on the map. That's cool and all, but the problem I found with it is that it's really hard to find a way to handle like collecting the coin because it's in the tile map. It's hard to make a collider for it and all this. So the easiest way, in my opinion, is just to make a prefab of an object, place it somewhere. In this case, the coin has an animator, so it'll look like it's kind of spinning. Again, if you want to offset it by a little bit, you hold down Control and you can drag it. Something as simple as that. Let's put some over here too. And then also have a little box object, which is just a box. Like that. That you can push around. So that's honestly the easiest way to make items, because then if you want to, like a coin, you know, you pick it up, it gets you can write a script for it, piece of cake, you just slap it on there. And then when you run into the coin, it'll destroy, and then add a point to the player's score. Easiest way to do it. So there's one more thing. Earlier I talked about the water, but you probably forgot about it by now. But to make animated tiles and what's called rule tiles, like R-U-L-E, which a rule tile is basically like when you drag, it'll automatically place the bottom, the top, like it'll do some algorithms and stuff to do that. And animated tiles, well, animated. You can't. There's no really easy way to do it in default Unity, which kind of stinks. But after some extensive research, apparently there is a GitHub repository by Unity, and the link is here. It is called 2D Extras. So if you take this link, I'll post it in the description below. You want to copy that, and it's basically the link to the GitHub repository. So what we're going to do with that after you get it is you go to Window and then Package Manager, since this is technically a package. And in here, we want to press the plus to add a new one and add package from Git URL. And then you can just paste it in here and click add. And then Unity will automatically go to Git, download it, import it. And this package will have a bunch of extra features that you can use with tile maps. I'm not going to dive too far into most of them, but you're more than welcome to in your own time. I will do the animated one though, just because I feel like it's a little more essential. Once that's done, you can just close out of the package manager. Don't know why that happens. And then if you look down in packages, you should see 2D Tilemap Editor. That means it's, or 2D Tilemap Extras. That means it's good to go. So now, to make that animated tile, we're actually going to go to Textures, Palettes, Tiles, and we want to we want to right-click in this folder, click Create, 2D, and then Tiles. So this is new. This wasn't here before. This isn't here by default. This is from the download we just did. So now we can make, there's a bunch of all these different tiles. You can see here, like random tile, it'll randomly spawn a tile in that location when it starts up. Weighted random means that like you can make it so like it's 90% of the chance to be this, 10% to be this or something. Pipeline terrain, those are a little different. Rule tile, yeah, like I said, it was when you draw it, it'll automatically change. But we want an animated tile. I'm just going to call this waterfall because I'm actually going to make 2 of them for this tutorial, which they're basically the same thing. 2D tiles, animated tile, and this one's just going to be water. So we'll do the waterfall first. So the waterfall is just the actual water that's falling. It only has 2 tiles. So if you click number of animated sprites, 2, it'll make a list here automatically. So then if you go back to the textures folder and open up the tile map, you have all these textures. We want to find the blue ones with the diagonal lines. There and there. It looks a little blurry in here, but like that's fine. Don't worry about it. You can leave everything else if you want to. If this is going to be an animated object that you can run into, you'll want to change the collider type to sprite or grid, depending on what you're doing. But in this case, we're just going to have the player fall through the water. So there's the waterfall, and then we want to do the same thing for the water. This one has 3 animations in it. Yeah, I gotta select the textures. So this time we will grab the top of the water. Okay. And that is it. So now in order to actually use these two animated tiles we just made, you got to add them to the tile palette, which is pretty easy, same as adding a normal picture. Just take it and drag it. It'll default to, I think, the first image that you have in there, which is fine as long as you know what it is. So now we can use these to draw. So I'm going to put these like here or something just to show them off. Actually, I'm on the foreground. I don't want to be on the foreground. So place them on the foreground. Do not want that. Control Z, undo that. We want these in the background so the player can fall through the water and die. So do that quick. Draw a little waterfall. Erase the line because I can't draw straight. That's all there is to animated tiles. Now if you play the game, you can see the items we added. The box that you can run into and push around. The coins that spin, that'll disappear when you click them. And then the water, which you'll notice is really slow. If you want to speed these up, let's stop the game first. If you click on the background object, you'll notice in the tile map section it says animation frame rate. You can just up this to some number like 5, and then when you play it again, the water will be animated much faster. And then, yeah, you can fall through it. Of course, you might want to make something so when you fall, you die. But that is pretty much all there is to it. Like I said, there's different types of tiles, but I mean the biggest part of using tile mapping is just stage or level design. I would 100% recommend sketching out a level for a game if you use this before you start on it, because it'll make it a lot better, and then you kind of know what you're doing. Maybe you can tweak things after, but something as easy as that. Again, if you want to do items, I would definitely make prefabs. Makes it a lot easier, definitely. But that is all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the club's Discord or directly DM me, Big Minty Mitch, in the Discord.